B, me name's Tyler now, 31, night shift operations, lead at a massive hotel laundry warehouse feeding most of the luxury high-rises downtown. Job sounds mind-numbing until you realize every sheet, robe, towel, and tablecloth upstairs passes through us. First, we handle guest rooms, spas, kitchens, ballrooms, and weddings, where people will absolutely sue over a wrinkle, places all steam clouds, chemicals sting, conveyor belts rattling non-stop, press machines hissing, wet floors, forklifts chirping every 5 seconds, and mountains of white linen stacked so bright it hurts. Your eye's crew looks like its own little country. Older ladies who've been here forever, immigrant dads grinding out double shifts, college kids barely awake, maintenance techs covered in grease, and 2 huge dudes who toss loaded carts around like they're empty grocery baskets. HR used to be this older woman, Linda. She handled schedules, injury reports, and the occasional speech about not stealing towels because, yes, the cameras work. Rules were dead, simple, keep clean, stuff clean, keep contaminated, stuff far away, keep machines running, and if anything jams, shut it down immediately. Nobody here cares about status because nobody ever sees us. But if we mess up, every 5-star suite upstairs suddenly looks like a motel. We service like 8 hotels, a couple event halls, and 1 private medical center whose laundry gets treated like biohazard gold, because lawsuits multiply there like bacteria. Life sucks, but it's stable and in operations. Stable is basically winning. Then one random Tuesday email drops. Subject line, mandatory staff meeting, introducing new director of workplace respect and inclusion. Title alone feels like stepping on a nail, mid-sentence. They pull us off the floor into the break room. Everyone still smells like bleach and hot fabric. Chairs dragged between dented lockers and a busted vending machine. General manager stands up front with this woman, early 30s, sharp haircut, expensive outfit. Shoes too clean for this building, face already looks tired of men existing. Her badge has pins that say things like trust women, emotional labor matters, and remove male control, which is not comforting around industrial equipment that can eat your arm. She introduces herself as Allison Vance, Director of Workplace Respect and Inclusion. Says she's here to transform unseen labor through equity systems. 3 older ladies near me exchange that exact silent look. The one that means this person is going to get someone hurt. She pulls up a slideshow talking about invisible labor, feminized roles, male-dominated machinery systems, and who controls workflow. Historically says industrial environments pretend to be neutral, but are actually built around male speed expectations, forcing women to adjust to masculine urgency. Every shift already exhausted hearing that because nobody has ever been injured here by masculine urgency, instead of, a screwed up load of wet sheets she keeps going, says women are constantly watched, corrected, crowded, and quietly controlled by male supervisors when machines act up. Slides show stock photos of dudes pointing at clipboards, while women work captions about ownership of care through authority. Sure, some guys can be annoying. That's not groundbreaking. Science problem starts when she says our facility will be the pilot program for something called Women-Centered Industrial Care. Final slide, pops up project. Soft flow reclaiming care systems from male control. My stomach immediately starts planning its exit strategy. Next morning, policy packet shows up printed on pale purple paper. Like that somehow makes it less insane. Phase 1, women priority zones. Certain areas instantly reassigned during main shifts. Surgical linen, folding, flat sheet, finishing towel, bundling lines. Men are not allowed to stay in those zones unless directly requested, or if there's already an obvious emergency translation, the exact areas where jams happen. Contamination spreads and quick decisions matter most, are now basically off limits. Allison says women shouldn't have to handle sensitive materials under male presence, correction, or pressure. Small issue, our best contamination control. Guys are 2 dudes who can spot a bad load from across the room. Bigger issue, one of them, Marco, basically built half the workarounds. Keeping this place alive at night. I ask what happens if the closest experienced person is a guy and there's a suspected contaminated load in one of those zones. She smiles like a kindergarten teacher, explaining sharing, says women need opportunities to manage risk themselves instead of being stepped over at the first sign of difficulty. Difficulty here means biotag sheets, isolation loads, clinic bags that nobody wants bursting open near clean inventory. 3 days later, Phase 2 rolls out called No Male Hovering and Public Override Restriction. Male supervisors are not allowed to stand behind women at feed stations, folding lanes, or roller entries unless invited. So, if someone starts feeding sheets wrong into a heated press, I'm supposed to wait. Old rule was sacred. If something dangerous starts, you call it out. Immediately hurt. Feelings can go. Sit in the parking lot. Later, Allison calls that behavior male urgency performance, reasserting control, which sounds like a condition you get from reading too many papers. She actually says, women can't build confidence if men keep stepping in whenever pressure rises. I tell her pressure is literally what this building runs on. She nods and writes that down like I just proved her point. Phase 3 goes after the cameras, because obviously it does. Allison says certain camera angles make women feel watched while doing repetitive work, especially inside women-led, clean areas. Security gets told to tilt cameras up and widen the view, so now we see general movement instead of actual station. Detail, sure, less creepy close-ups also means we can't clearly see mixed loads. Blocked lanes, loose sheets, or contamination crossing lines until it's already a problem. I send an email laying this out. Step by step, include real incidents from a few months back. One involving clinic laundry and pure luck saving us. She replies with 3 long paragraphs saying, men mistake surveillance for safety whenever women question legacy control systems. I print that email and stick it in a folder labeled Future Disaster, because yeah, that's coming. Now Phase 4 somehow manages to be worse, introduces recovery corners. Women can set up small decompression spots where men are not allowed unless invited, and speaking in supportive language. One of these gets placed right next to Control Panel 9, which controls the backup diversion system for our busiest sheet finishing line. That panel is what reroutes flagged loads away from clean output. If scanners or visual checks catch something off, I ask if maybe the emotional safe space shouldn't share a wall with the thing that prevents contaminated sheets from reaching surgical packaging. Allison says women deserve at least one area not structured around male urgency or machine logic, which is a terrifying sentence in a building entirely run by machine logic. First few weeks soft flow mostly feels dumb instead of dangerous, because experienced workers quietly bend rules. Whenever something sketchy starts happening, older women hate it. They earned authority through knowing their job, not through symbolic roles. Now they're being treated like examples instead of workers. Guys hate it. They're stuck behind taped lines while carts pile up and alarms chirp non-stop. Whole place sounds like angry birds mixed with bleach fumes. Customers don't exist down here, so Allison gets bolder. Only audience for her ideas is upper management and our frustration. Then busy season hits 2 hotels. We serve open new floors at the same time. The clinic ramps up overnight procedures and 1 luxury venue. Books back-to-back wedding weekends with like 1,800 guests each on top of that. We're chasing a massive contract with a private hospital chain called Mercer Heights. Health, they want a full facility tour during simulated peak load. They need to see we can handle surgical volume without contamination or delays. Contract is huge enough money to replace dying motors and maybe fix the leak. Dripping over Dock 3 every time it rains, Allison immediately decides this visit will showcase women-centered performance under pressure. Says women must be visibly leading every critical area. So, Mercer Heights sees a system no longer driven by male command. Reflex's operations manager looks like a guy whose soul just filed for overtime, but he agrees because the money is insane. Then she unveils her big idea, Women's Night of Care for 1 full shift. All visible critical work will be women. Lead men get pushed into background support roles, so women run line 7. Women handle clean sheet folding. Women manage clinic linen. Checks, women take every visible leadership spot. My best machine tech, Marco, gets reassigned to dock paperwork and trash compactor duty, because he's apparently too central to the narrative. Our other top guy, Ivan, gets sent to basement rag sorting because competence is now bad optics. I ask straight up if peak simulation night is really when we sideline half the people who know how to save these machines. Allison says this is exactly the night, because women deserve to be seen handling pressure without men turning struggle into proof. Sounds inspiring until you remember heat, steam, belts, and thousands of sheets flying through metal rollers the week before the visit line. 7 starts acting weird after a bearing swap. Nothing catastrophic, but scanner B occasionally misreads. Tags needs quick visual confirmation before loads enter. Clean flow, old system was simple. Bruno, or I watch the monitor, hear the alert, hit. Divert check stripe. Keep things moving, problem solved, before anyone notices. Now line 7 sits inside a women priority zone. Camera angles are worse, and guys are discouraged from standing nearby, ready to step in. Women assigned for the showcase are Dana, smart but still new under pressure, Rachel careful but slow, and Kayla from day shift. She's solid with routine bundles, but contamination sorting makes her nervous. She told me that herself during a smoke break a couple weeks ago. I bring all of this up in the planning meeting, get told I'm predicting women's failure before they even start. I say no. I'm predicting machine behavior, because the machine already started acting up. Allison writes that down, like she just caught me confessing something. Day of the Mercer Heights visit. Finally shows up, air feels thick enough to chew. Steam hangs low under the ceiling. Machines louder than usual. Every cart feels heavier, like bad decisions. Actually add weight to the building. Mercer Heights team shows up in clean coats and shoe covers. Like they're about to walk into an operating room, one woman from purchasing, one guy from operations, and an infection control specialist with completely dead eyes. Dead eyes are worse than yelling, means they already know exactly what failure smells like. Allison greets them like she's presenting a historic achievement, talking about women leading invisible healthcare labor without male interference or corrective pressure. They nod, polite, already writing things down. Rest of us just trying not to sweat through our shirts. We kick off the simulated peak run, dirty carts start flooding in all at once, surgery loads, maternity, ICU, hotel towers, banquet linens, clinic bags, all hitting within the same ugly hour. Buzzers going off non-stop, rollers screaming steam, hanging thick radios popping with chatter. Exact kind of shift, where you absolutely do not try new philosophies. First, 30 minutes, look fine if you don't actually know what fine is supposed to look like. Women on the lines are grinding hard because none of this mess is their fault, and they want it to work. Allison glowing next to the Mercer Heights Health. People pointing out women-led stations like, it's a guided tour of progress. Then line 7 gives that half chirp from scanner. B same glitch. We've been warning about all week. Normally Marco would already be there. Problem dead in under 10 seconds. Marco is currently downstairs dealing with cardboard waste, because apparently his existence ruins the optics. Dana hears, the chirp hesitates, leans in. Trying to read the feed cart stacking behind her, she lets the first load go through default routing. My stomach tightens instantly, even from a distance and bad camera angle that stripe looks off. I step toward the tape line, grab the radio, tell Dana to hold the next load, and manually check. Before it clears, Allison cuts in immediately right in front of the clients, says do not introduce male panic into women's workflow during the demonstration. Infection, control. Lady looks at me, then the line, then Allison and says, nothing, which is somehow worse than yelling. Next load comes in, scanner chirps again. Rachel reaches to stop it, but the feed bunches. She clears tension first, because nobody wants a fabric avalanche bag, slips through still, maybe fine still. Maybe just scanner, acting stupid. Then Kayla grabs a partially open bundle at output, and I see it clear enough to feel in my teeth. Yellow stripe isolation, wrong lane that should never be anywhere near clean output without controlled handling. I hit the radio, hard stop line, 7 now, full stop, isolate output. Nobody touches anything without gloves and containment bags. Allison, still trying to sound composed for the audience, says we should avoid alarmist language until the women assess. Calmly, I ignore her completely. Step past the boundary slam, the emergency stop belt. Shrieks, grinds down, carts start stacking behind it. Whole room shifts. Everyone's suddenly aware something just went very wrong. Marco comes up fast after hearing my tone, already pulling gloves on, because guys who know disaster, sounds don't wait for permission. Infection control, specialist walks closer. Voice calm. Almost too calm asks if contaminated linen just entered the clean surgical stream during their visit. That question feels like money, evaporating in real time. Allison starts talking about precautionary pauses and how women are still leading the response. I pull the stripe fully into view, and whatever illusion was left just dies under fluorescent lights. Isolation linen already rode partway into clean flow before we stopped it. Not far, but far enough now, every downstream cart is suspect needs tracing, quarantine, paperwork. The whole nightmare infection control woman asks why the most experienced contamination staff weren't positioned at the line during a stress test. I answer before anyone can spin it, because if someone lies right now, I might actually lose it. I say this was a women-led demo, and our most experienced men were reassigned for visibility. Reasons operations guy from Mercer Heights, Health actually says it out loud. You staged a symbolic workforce setup during an infection control audit? That sentence alone should have ended Allison on the spot. Rest of the night turns into pure damage control tracking, everything, quarantining, loads, rebundling, logging, every movement clipboard, hell everywhere. Anything that touched line 7 output gets bagged and flagged, surgical sheets delayed, clinic loads held back. Maternity flow rerouted entire system, choking, because one bag crossed into the wrong story. Operations manager sweating through his collar while Allison keeps pitching our response as proof of resilient care values. Mercer Heights, people leave early handshakes, cold promises even colder by sunrise. It's over hospital board, CEO, legal, Every nightmare in a suit wants answers. I haven't slept. Still get called into a noon review because apparently being right is unpaid. Overtime, conference room, packed ops, manager, CEO, on video. Allison legal infection control consultant, and me, because I hit the stop. They replay footage angles are garbage because Allison had cameras moved still enough to see the delay. Wrong lane my warning, and Allison telling everyone to stay calm. Legal asks why, camera coverage on line 7 was reduced, especially when that line controls contamination and separation during contract review. I hand over my email, the one where I warned about exactly this, and got a lecture about surveillance culture and male oversight. Narratives infection control, consultant asks why the most experienced contamination staff weren't at that line during the test. Allison says women needed visible leadership under pressure, without men overshadowing them. Consultant says infection control isn't a performance. Writes something down that sounds expensive. CEO asks if the women were properly trained. I answer straight trained for normal flow. Yes, trained for failure under peak pressure, not enough, Allison says. If men hadn't dominated these systems for decades, women would already have faster instincts and more confidence. Ops. Manager drops his pen, just lets it roll, like his body quit. Mid-sentence consultant asks why emergency stop wasn't immediate, why contaminated linen moved at all. Allison says she wanted to avoid chaos and public embarrassment and preserve women's authority in front of clients. I say it before I can filter it. Better embarrassment than infection. Room goes quiet, no one argues. Legal asks for every project soft flow policy starts reading. Face looks like a guy checking poison ingredients. Women only zones, no. Hovering camera changes recovery corners next to control panels, reducing visible male expertise. Each page makes the room feel less like a meeting, more like a trial. And the defense brought a mood board that evening, Mercer Heights. Health sends official notice contract on hold pending review. On hold basically means dead, unless a miracle shows up with paperwork. Next morning, CEO calls another meeting, District V. P joins outside, risk advisor, brought in older woman, used to run hospital logistics. No slogans, no patience, just tired competence. She reads everything silent the whole time. That silence is worse than yelling. Then she asks why emergency systems and contamination response were pushed aside for symbolic staffing. Allison launches into speech about reclaiming women's authority from historical male control of risk systems. Advisor cuts through it. Clean says, confidence without backup is theater, and theater is what contaminated your line. Then she drops it harder. Says removing experienced support didn't protect women, it increased risk around them. Says the women weren't empowered, they were exposed, under-supported, and then blamed with nice language when things failed. Ops manager looks like he might throw up, because he knows she's right and he let it happen. CEO stops pretending, asks if any of this was reviewed by hospital compliance before rollout. Allison admits she moved fast, says normal processes would have slowed progress and diluted what women needed. Legal rubs, his forehead says. That sentence alone will look horrible if this goes to discovery. By evening, company-wide email drops. Subject: immediate operational reset tone, calm, content, brutal, all soft. Flow policies suspended, camera angles restored, control, panel access. Reopen line assignments, back to certification and experience, not symbolism, not messaging, actual skill. Cross support allowed again, because reality finally punched through the training slides, middle paragraph. Hits clean. Allison Vance no longer with the company, no goodbye, no meeting office, dark next morning, her little pin gone from the board floor. Doesn't celebrate older women, just work faster. 3 carts ahead of quota before lunch. Marco gets line 7 back, mutters something under his breath that sounds thankful and violent. At the same time, Elena hands me terrible gas station. Coffee says, next time, yell sooner. Honestly, best advice I've gotten all year. Eventually, Mercer Heights. Health comes back after audits, apologies, and enough paperwork to suffocate a building, they give us a small trial. First, like feeding a stray, from a distance we handle it perfectly, because competence actually scales and survives contact with reality. Months later, someone sends me an article. Allison wrote some leadership site. White background, expensive sadness tone. Headline about being pushed out for making healthcare work. Safer for women, talks about fragile men. Hostile systems. Punishment for challenging masculine urgency. No mention of the yellow stripe, no mention of the emergency stop. Definitely no mention of contaminated linen, almost hitting surgical supply during her demo. I close it, walk the floor, watch clean sheets stack into carts heading upstairs, places where people are actually sick or giving birth or dying. People think laundry is boring, just towels and folding. But one bad decision here rides an elevator straight into surgery, or a newborn room, or someone's last days. If anyone ever tells me urgency is a male problem, I'll hand them an isolation bag and tell them to theory craft faster.